And are we live?
And we're live with the alien scientist.
Thank you. Alex, welcome to the Alien Scientist Science and Controversies Hour. I'm your host, Jeremy Riss, and the views and opinions expressed on this program, as always, are not the views necessarily shared by our hosts or guests we have on from week to week. So enjoy the topics that we have on, and just know that not everyone agrees with everything all the time. So today I wanted to talk about the ancient aliens theory. I thought that it was kind of funny that the guy from the channel, from the History Channel's Ancient Aliens program, George Tsoukalos, is going to be on. He's going to be on Open Questions and Answers tonight at 7 p.m. tonight, right before the premiere of the Ancient Aliens in Search of Aliens, which is, I guess, the new Ancient Aliens TV show that's coming on. And I'll go ahead and share my screen so you can see this. So this is it, and this guy, everyone knows him from is the Ancient Aliens guy, and he's going to be on. He's going to be on Ancient Aliens. I mean, he's going to be answering questions tonight. So I was just wanted to talk about the Ancient Aliens freaking theory and sort of go over some of these ideas with people today on today's show, because I've always thought this was interesting, especially that it's in mainstream pop culture and they're talking about aliens on regular TV shows and stuff, which is whatever. But anyway, so I want to show you guys. Let me get my pictures up here, and want to start off with is the. Also going to talk about the second half. I want to talk about just the physics of moving big and heavy blocks and objects, and some of the stuff that's out there and ideas out there for how the ancient people were able to carve and build such massive structures, and especially the megaliths and the really large blocks of stone that were cut and bored out and moved and transported really long distances. So we're going to start off with pretty much the guy who started it all is a guy named Eric von Daniken, and he wrote a book called Chariot of the Gods, which pretty much started this whole ancient aliens theory. And inside that book, I actually read that book in high school. It was one of the first books on aliens that I ever read. And in that book, he basically puts forward the notion that aliens built the pyramids, that they built pyramids not only in Egypt but also in South America and elsewhere, and that only aliens could have built the pyramids because I don't know, for whatever reason, he makes a bunch of arguments that the 2.5 million blocks of the pyramids would be too hard to cut and move with the amount of slaves that were alive at the time and people in the world at the time. It would have been there wasn't enough time or enough manpower or enough resources to support the building of the pyramids by slave labor, as sort of the notion of how we've all been taught the pyramids were built. You know, the guys heaving blocks and cutting them and stacking them, and just the whole notion that they were built by humans as sort of this elongated mastabas. A mastaba is like an old tomb. It's an old type of tomb, and that they said they just built mastaba on top of mastaba to build the first step pyramids, and then they eventually started building these large pyramids, and they wanted to build one so massive and so giant that it was just unfathomable by people's or anyone of how this thing could have been built. It was the most grandest tomb ever constructed. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily against the idea that aliens built the pyramids. I just think that it's sort of like this cop out to say that oh well, aliens just explains everything. It fills in all the holes, and it's the perfect explanation because obviously if aliens built the pyramids, there everything's solved. We don't really have to figure out how they built them, or think about it, or wrap our minds around how they stacked all those massive stones and quarried them. So that's sort of I sort of compare it to the idea of people that like evolutionists versus creationists, sort of the people that believe that everything was just put here and well, God just created it all, and that answer satisfies a lot of people because it explains all the available data. There's no unanswered questions, and that sits better with a lot of people. People don't like having unanswered questions. Of course, in science, you have to just learn to accept that you don't what you don't know, or that you or understand what you don't know, or that you do not actually know something, or rather than just make up the assumption that oh yeah, well this maybe explains all the available data, but there's not necessarily any hard evidence or proof that aliens built these structures versus any other ancient peoples. But it's still kind of mind-boggling how they could have constructed such really large massive structures with just a bunch of slaves dragging cutting these things out of a quarry with primitive tools, and then stacking them so so massively high. It's sort of hard to wrap your mind around how an ancient king or whatever could have accomplished this. So I don't know. But it's also, I don't discount the ideas that maybe there were some ancient alien. We could be visited right now. Who knows? Like there could be aliens out there, and there seems to be a lot of evidence and a lot of people who think that there are aliens out there, and there's not really any super hard evidence though. So that's the problem, is that there's not like this smoking gun to say that oh, this definitely aliens here, or they definitely interacted with us at some time in our ancient past. Like the whole um, idea that the Bible's depictions of these angels that came down from heaven, or some of these ancient texts that talk about angels from the sky coming down from heaven, that those were possibly aliens, that aliens came down and that they were interpreted as gods, or supreme beings or whatever. And so, anyways, in that book, Eric von Daniken's, it's the same exact stuff that I'm talking about now. The idea that aliens built the pyramids. He brings up a bunch of this stuff from the pyramids the Incan pyramids in Peru and whatnot. So this is the interesting one. There's this one tablet that he says is this guy who looks like he's the passenger in an astronaut rocket ship. It's this relief plaque. It was a big stone that they put over a tomb, apparently, and this was the inscription on it. And he seems to think that this is some type of rocket ship. That these are flames coming out the back of it, and this guy's lying down in this sort of rocket ship thing, like a. Let me find the there's a oh yeah, this chariot of the gods thing. There's this description, the comparison to an astronaut in a chair to this Incan guy who's sitting on this altar or doing whatever he's doing in this ancient relief image that was carved in the stone. So I don't know. It's very sketchy evidence. I don't think this is anything like smoking gun, and there's been a lot of I don't know. I just, as a skeptic and someone, I think it's really neat, and I like the idea of it. It's certainly fascinating to think about what if there were aliens. Why did they build these Nazca lines in Peru? That was another thing in Eric von Daniken's book. Why would they stack these rocks for miles and make these large lines in the middle of the desert? if they're only visible from the air and these people didn't have flying machines or anything, why would they build such things and make them? And I'm sure there's explanations for these things that we don't know, because we don't know who built them. But just to say that it was built by aliens or for aliens to see, or anything else, is sort of just like this. I mean, I use the picture all the time of the. Let me find it. Hold on. Sorry, I wish my show was more organized than it is, but yeah, this guy, the aliens meme. It really is this whole cop out of saying just, oh, we don't understand this history, we don't really have all the pieces, but aliens would explain all this stuff. It's sort of a it's sort of an interesting idea. Anyways, we might take some calls today and get some other people on our show today to share some other ideas. Um, I did think this was interesting. I'd like to call into this show that this guy's going to be on tonight. I'm going to try and see if I can call in live and just get him some science questions and see what he has to say. I mean, see if he can even answer um, the questions about this, because I really just I see a whole lot of hypothesis and theorizing and guesswork, but I don't see a real lot of evidence to say like, oh well, look, we have this proof. It would be really easy if one of the theories in that George Tsoukalos puts forward in this Ancient Aliens that he brings up is the idea that aliens came back at a distant time and mated with primitive human beings like Cro-Magnon man, and sort of that our DNA is part alien, that we're not just descended from Earth creatures and monkeys, that we are actually part alien, and this theory that's been put forward. And I think the studies that are being done with the mitochondrial DNA and linking back the genetics and stuff, I think that those will find evidence for that sort of thing if there is a link. And of course, there's the other people that think that the royal family are lizard people and that they're really aliens, and DNA would also solve that issue as well. That's why I stress the scientific method. And
Now, I have a quick question. I know you're going with it. I'll definitely run. Do you mind me interrupting? I just have a quick question. Is that
not at all,
all
man.
right? So, let's say, first question is, do you think we have been visited before? And I guess it's 1A. Do you think it was a fact that we were mixing with the aliens, or do you feel it was more like a Prometheus kind of theory where it was dropped into the water and then had somehow progressed from there, and then we evolved? That's the only question I pretty much got. So, what do you think, sir?
Well, I mean, to answer the first part of your question, like the DNA thing, I think that would be the best way to find evidence for that if there was mixing and stuff. But the other question there was whether we're being visited or not. I think that you know it's really interesting. A lot of people see UFOs and think that that's evidence of aliens, but I'm not convinced that really that would be evidence of aliens. I think that if they are out there, the Fermi Paradox, why they should be out there mathematically, right? But we don't see them or have direct contact with them, or we can't observe them or see them leaving their home world or coming here or whatever. But just to say that the mathematical odds for them being out there are astronomical. So there's got to be something out there. Just the fact that we're here, there's got to be something else out there, I feel. But also, to answer the Fermi paradoxes, I don't think that they would interact with us as being a primitive species that we are. We don't have interstellar capability. We don't really leave our planet too much, except to go into orbit every now and again. But we're not like venturing off into other planets, or really interfering too much in the wide scheme of space. And there's a lot of space out there, and we haven't really reached very far beyond our home world. So that really, I don't think that they're too concerned with us. I don't think that they would show themselves to us either. And that's based on, based on just what happens in any time a advanced culture interacts with a primitive culture, it totally changes the primitive culture and messes up their natural evolution, which is, I think, something that they'd be interested in watching. If they are here watching us, I don't think that they would show themselves to us either, because just the fact that interstellar travel, in order for them to get from the other nearest stars to our planet, they would have to have mastered, space time and gravity, or some sort of interstellar travel capability, and that's a lot more complex of a problem than invisibility and warping magnetic fields to make things invisible. So, like, I really think that they would have, if they have the technology to get here, then they have the technology to be invisible to us, and I don't think they would even show themselves to us, because why would they, if they want to study us in our natural state, or if they don't want to interfere with us or mess up our natural evolution. Of course, there's other theories that they are sort of being this sort of hidden hand and helping us out along the way and interacting with us, and you know maybe there's signs through it throughout history. Maybe it's so subtle that there is no direct evidence of it or proof, but it's still there. That's a possibility. I don't discount those things as a scientist. I don't discount anything. I just don't believe anything unless there's direct scientific evidence for it, or some like hard, physical proof of some kind. That's sort of where I draw the line. But onto the idea of just moving and quarrying these heavy stones. And what was with the ancient culture's fascination with doing things like that? Why did they build Stonehenge, and why did they build, all these other structures out of these massive structures out of stone? And one of the reasons, I think, is just because things that are built out of stone last. And I think that, like past kings and people that wanted to leave a lasting mark on their empire, because any king that has power, they realize their mortality and that they're not going to live forever. So I guess it was sort of like building things out of stone, especially these massive tombs and large pyramids and stuff. I think it was a way to sort of solidify their immortality or their place in history, so that like, no matter what, if I build this gigantic pyramid, or like I move these stones, that nobody else is going to have the coordination and know-how and knowledge to, put all this stuff together and move. But of course, that leads to the question: is how do they move the stones? And a lot of people, these ancient alien theorists, that think that aliens taught ancient peoples, some secret way to turn gravity off or lift really heavy objects, and maybe that there's some sort of anti-gravity thing involved. And I've looked into this theory. There's a lot of videos about different things out there, and there's this one guy down in Homestead, Florida, named Edward Leedskalnin. Very interesting guy, and he quarried and moved a whole bunch of blocks and made this. He cut all these limestone blocks and lifted them and moved them with his own equipment. Usually in the cover of night. He didn't like people seeing how he worked and watching him work. But he claimed that he knew the secrets of how they built the pyramids, and that he built this giant structure. It's still in Homestead, Florida to this day. You can go and take tours there, and I've known people that have gone there. I plan to go there at some point, maybe the end of the summer or sometime. But there's people that believe that Ed Leedskalnin used this magnetic flywheel and some radio frequency tuners to basically, that he quarried this specific type of coral limestone coral that had a specific harmonic resonance. These stones would sing, or they'd if you hit them, they'd resonate in this. They'd ring in a certain way. They'd have this simple natural harmonic resonance, or what have you. And this has been a property of the stones that's been reported in a lot of other types of stone that have been used in these types of structures. So it's sort of sparked this idea that there's some way to lift or move heavy objects or stones using some sort of resonances and frequencies, and tuning there's this whole theory on the Coral Castle Code that says that he had this box on the top of the on the top of his he used like three telephone poles as like a derrick, and he had this box with these electric tuners on top for some reason. These two big chain hoists, another chain hoist hooked to the thing lifting it. But they said that he'd run a wire up from the flywheel, which I think was used as some sort of power generator, that would run a current up to this box to some tuners, and then another wire that would run around the rock and charge the rock or electrify it with some sort of frequency or electromagnetic waves that would interact somehow to basically make the rock lighter or make it lose its weight. So this is a theory. I don't think that it's ever been no one's ever been able to prove or demonstrate this or go no one's ever gone there and actually done like real hardcore experiments or come up with a real actually what could be considered a theory in physics for how this could actually work to eliminate gravity. Of course, we don't have a good understanding of gravity, as I talked about in last week's episode, and the whole discussion on quantum gravity. It could be possible that there's some hidden secret to quantum gravity that's hidden here that these guys knew, like this guy, Ed Scallon, maybe he figured it out. There's this whole theory that he came from Latvia or at the far of Tsar Nicholas, that he was one of the Tsar Nicholas's secret police, and that when the Russian government or whatever fell to the Soviet Union or some I don't know the history, but apparently he fled with all these secrets from the secret police, and that he knew these ancient secrets that he had learned and used them to move all these stones and do this work, and then was real secretive about it. He wouldn't tell anybody how he did it and wouldn't share his secrets. He apparently took him to his grave, although he did publish a couple interesting books, which one's called Magnetic Current, and then I don't know, a couple of this other guy wrote this book called The Coral Castle Code, and just makes a lot of really bad physics approach to physics, like saying things like the inherent mathematical value of magnetic currents is phi. Phi is an irrational repeating decimal, and the value of magnetic current. So current is defined as a flux in electromagnetic theory, and magnetic flux or magnetic currents or magnetic fields are generated by moving electrons or moving electric fields. So, according to Faraday's law, and I wish I could let me bring that up for you guys so you guys can see. Call some electromagnetism, Maxwell's equations. Just Google Maxwell's equations and look up Faraday's law. You'll see which ones are magnetic fields. There's, could probably write it on the board behind you. It might be faster, but so anyways, this is the B is the magnetic field. So this says that there's no diverging magnetic fields. Magnetic fields do not diverge; they loop around continuously and meet where they come from, and come back on the whatever's producing the magnetic fields. And the production of Curlian magnetic fields are produced by currents traveling through a wire, which is J, or this term right here, I enclosed, current enclosed, and also time varying electric fields or time varying charges, like charges moving around will create magnetic fields. And these are the time tested, proven vector field equations as derived by James Clerk Maxwell and Oliver Heaviside. And actually, I think they were first derived by Heaviside, and then James Clerk Maxwell sort of formalized them and condensed them into these four integral and differential or point form. And but anyways, that's how electromagnetism works. I don't know how I don't know what I think about this Coral Castle Code stuff. I've looked at it. It's pretty it's like looks like a lot of guesswork and stuff. But really, I've looked at this and tried to figure out ways, and maybe thought, that there's some way to stimulate atoms at some sort of resonant frequency, especially that these could be considered metamaterials, supposedly because they are repeating structures. This coral structure in the stone, or in the other cases of different types of stone, like quartz and granite and other types of stones that have been used in megaliths, that there may be some type of current or frequency that you can jam through these rocks, which do something to make some sort of electromagnetic or electrical forces that would repel the Earth and make them lighter or easier to carry. But I don't really know that that's the ultimate answer. I thought that this was an interesting video that I saw a while back about this guy that moves big rocks in his spare time, and he builds these interesting things using exploits of balance and symmetry in order to move heavy rocks. Like he builds this thing which balances the rock and makes it, as long as the rock's balanced, you're not fighting against the rock itself. You're just basically offsetting the balance slightly, and then as soon as you offset the balance, it's going to move to one side or the other and teeter-totter. So the idea is to get underneath the object's center of mass or center of gravity. But this is an interesting video, and I want to talk about that more when we come back from our break. But we're going to take a quick commercial break now, and hopefully I get some calls from people when we come back. So, all right, roll commercials.
The Zadalza Entertainment Network on ZenLive.tv. Here, you'll find ridiculously good-looking people equipped with knowledge.
You're gonna roll them commercials.
Does it get any
Alex?
sexier? A filtered mind is the only
We're playing
crime
them.
for Zen Live. Stay
Okay.
tuned. You're watching the Zadalza Entertainment Network on ZenLive.tv. Here, you'll find ridiculously good-looking people equipped with knowledge, intellect, and passion for speaking the truth. Does it get any sexier? A filtered mind is the only crime for Zen Live. Stay tuned.
And we're back with the alien scientist.
Thanks. All right, so moving forward with that break, we were talking about just the general theory about how to cut and move giant stones. Of course, the trick to cutting stone is just using material of hardness or harder strength.
We have a phone call. Hold on 1 second while we connect you.
All right.
Hello, you're on with the alien scientist.
Yes, hi. I'd like to ask him a question, Jeremy a question.
All right. You
It
guys
really,
are connected? Oh, wait. We can't see the other gentleman, but are you still there?
I'm still here.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Hey, Jeremy, it's Ken Griggs from last week. I just had a quick question for you, and that has to do with it actually has to do with Star Trek, but it's the whole notion of the major principle in Star Trek, which is you don't contact civilizations that don't have that level of expertise that you might have for traveling faster than light. Because you kind of mentioned that before. I know you're talking about fulcrums right now, but if you have a moment, I'd love for you to respond to sort of that whole Star Trek way of looking at of civilizations and how we do or don't interact with each other.
Yeah, it's called the Prime Directive, and
Yes, the Prime Directive, exactly.
and it's one of the prime tenets of here it is. If you look up Prime Directive, and the fictitious universe, it's the guiding principle of the United Federation of Planets, and also known as Non-Interference Directive, and it's sort of it makes a lot of sense, and I think that it's my explanation for the Fermi Paradox. Really, it is that if any intelligent species that would sort of get that capability would probably not communicate or be communicative or try to find other alien species or alert other primitive species to their presence or their technology or anything like that. So yeah, this is it's a conceptual law that applies particularly to civilizations which are below a certain threshold of development, preventing starship crews from using their superior technology to impose their own values or ideals on them. So it's basically a non. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I completely agree with you. It's no different than when we go into the Sahara and we start trying to understand lions or something like that. We don't just kind of step in their, presence and say, hey, here we are, because chances are they're going to eat us. But, we get into a helicopter, we tranquilize them, we bring them in, we do whatever we're going to do, and then we send them back out into the wild with a collar on and hope and pray that they're not smart enough to figure out what's around their neck. So I don't have that same feeling that if there's a higher civilization or more advanced civilization,
now I have to ask a question because I'm live from the studio, and being that you mentioned the lions, now there was recently that civilization that was found within the Incan area, and they had first contact with anyone outside of there from a helicopter, and since then have gone exploring. What do you say has to do with that?
Are you asking me or are you asking Jeremy?
So this is a primitive culture that it's been in the Amazon, never had contact with
exactly.
people.
And now they're making their first contact. They left them isolated because since they never had contact with anyone else, any illnesses outside of their area could possibly kill them. So they left them alone. Right. But now, since they're exploring, what's the best way to handle that?
Vaccinate.
Vaccinations. No. What's interesting is like in primitive cultures, this happened in Papua New Guinea and elsewhere in the South Pacific Islands. They get what's called these cargo cults, and but the other thing was back to what you were talking about. It's called the zoo hypothesis. It's similar to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Is whatever you're watching is the active observation interaction changes the state of whatever you're observing. So you want to make that observation as minimal as possible. And it's explanation. It says right here it's the explanation for the Fermi paradox. So, but onto this other idea. What did I wanted to look up the cargo cults. The idea of these cargo cults is that these people would be these primitive cultures, and they'd see airplanes come down from the sky, and build a runway, and then build the big silver birds would come down with all these goods on them, like all this supplies and food and all these great things. So they thought it was witchcraft or magic, so they'd try to build their own runway and a little radio tower with like coconuts for headphones and think that was going to summon the giant silver birds down from the sky to land and bring them bring them goodies and stuff too.
Bring them the manna.
The manna from heaven, and they'd build these fake planes and everything, and try to copy the airplanes and stuff to basically mimic them. It is really interesting it's sort of they have this really different mentality, a lot of belief in witchcraft and sort of
Hmm.
spirits and other things. So they don't really put the two together that there's other technology at play here or something else going on. They really think it's just a form of witchcraft that they're trying to figure out and learn, and obviously it doesn't work.
Right, and what you're saying is the idea. A part of it is the idea that if you don't understand the technology of something, you generally call it magic, and that's just something we've been doing throughout all of human civilization. And I guess that's the reason for the Prime Directive, right? I do have another question for you, and that is that when we went into our megalithic era of civilization, we actually did something very strange. We started looking up at the sky. So we went from sort of praying and dealing with what was just around us on the ground and making those things into gods, into looking up at the sky and turning those things into gods. How do you feel about that? What do you think was happening during, or what do you think's going on with that?
Yes, it's really interesting that a lot of the megalithic structures deal with astrological events, like the solstices lining up with Stonehenge,
Hmm.
or Stonehenge. The theory that Stonehenge was used as an astronomical calendar of sorts, um, and also combined with the pyramids being built to look like the stars in Orion's belt is
That's right.
pointed out, or being aligned perfectly with, or being used as possible observatories, or reference points for making astronomical observations, or what have
Hmm.
you. So yeah, it's really interesting that those two things would coincide. That in addition to building these giant megalithic structures, sort of also came with us looking up into the skies and studying astronomical data. Like, could they have gotten the answers or the understanding of how to move these blocks from looking up at the sky? And I mean, I don't know. I think that it's certainly interesting how they developed the abilities and this sort of knowledge for moving these massive stones and quarrying them, and then moving them halfway across England to Salisbury Plain to set them up in these exact patterns and stuff. It's sort of, yeah. I mean, I don't think that aliens that built them. It's not that. It's
Right.
not like, I won't go to that friggin' extreme, but
Hmm.
it's definitely an interesting step in the scheme of things, and just in terms of stonemasonry and everything. Anyway, it's so some of this work that they did back then is just these guys were master masons.
Yes.
They probably were the great grandson of a guy that worked with stone his entire life, and they worked with stone their entire life too. Um, so I don't think it's impossible that people could have gotten this good, or developed these sorts of trade craft and skills. Um, it certainly boggles the mind, some of these the weight and massiveness of some of these stones, that how they you think they would lift these things or even get them going. And then Easter Island too. Easter Island's just another
Yeah.
mystery. It's in the middle of the freaking nowhere, and these guys cut and quarried and built all those stone heads and all over the island for whatever
Hmm.
reason. And yeah, there's a lot of these interesting sites, and I think maybe there's something. It's definitely a human thing, because humans have done it all over the place, and not just
Yes.
isolated to one area. So it's
Well, and so that kind of, as Von Daniken and the rest of those ancient alien people are talking about, it kind of begs, well, if it's happening all over the place at around the same period of time, then generally it's not a random occurrence. Generally, there's some sort of interaction that's sort of giving up information from one place to the other to the other. Because I guess it could occur as a random occurrence, in the scheme of 10 billion years, but chances are there was probably some kind of an influence. Now, it could have been just by water, all right? It could have been the seafaring, nation has decided to spread itself out, or maybe it's some alien, who knows? But if they're all building these megalithic structures at the same time period, we do have to ask, maybe, what brought them together to come up with this idea simultaneously? Maybe it was an event. Maybe there was a meteor shower or a nova or something like that inspired everybody simultaneously.
Right, a massive wave of sightings.
That's
Maybe
right.
the sky god Quetzalcoatl, came down. That's what happened in there. According to their legends, the sky god Quetzalcoatl came down and showed
That's
them.
right. That's right.
Taught them how to do it. So it's definitely, I don't totally discount the idea. I think it's very interesting, but I also kind of I compare it with the sort of evolution creation thing. Is just because you don't have all the answers doesn't mean that just
that's right.
You
go to magic.
You go to magic, or gods did it, or aliens did it, or whatever have you.
And I completely I was just going to say I completely agree with you on that. I did want to point out something that there is. I mentioned him last week. His name is Louis Kaufman, who is a mathematician, whatever. But he did a little bit of work on something with Richard Feynman, but Feynman and Dyson came up with a more generalized electromagnetism. And in their more generalized version of electromagnetism, there's something called a B cross B field, which comes about when you have a changing magnetic field, and then you take the curl of the electric field, and the result is what we call a B cross B field. In other words, it's a magnetic field that spins. And in normal electromagnetism, this term is zero. However, in the more generalized Feynman-Dyson version of electromagnetism, this term is small, but not zero. And I put that out there because not many people talk about it, but it certainly could kind of explain some of the strangeness that's associated with aliens or with, Bermuda Triangle stuff, or however you want to call it. But essentially what everybody seems to notice is that the compasses spin. And that's what that's doing. That's sort of what that's saying, is that if you put a compass in that kind of B cross B field, it's going to spin. So I just wanted to throw that at you as well and say, there are the ideas that electromagnetism is not, in its form coming from Maxwell, is not complete, that there's a tiny but still measurable difference between that and more generalized versions of electromagnetism.
Yeah, and that's sort of the experimentation that needs to be done, where you're moving away from the theoretical side of it, where you have guys like Griffiths that have written out all the formalisms and his text, which is a standard in teaching electromagnetism.
Right.
But
old Griffiths.
Right, but you also have the experimentalists out there trying new things and experimenting with sort of trying to find out where these vector field functions break down or may not hold true, or there's a lot of interesting stuff. I hadn't heard of that I think I've heard of the B cross B field before, and there's a lot of talk about rotating magnetic current and rotating magnetic fields and stuff. That was one of the ideas I was hearing thrown around a lot back in the day, of trying to figure out how you could create a gravitomagnetic fields or other sorts of things. So and by the way, Gravity Probe B, and do you know anything about that with your quantum gravity research and stuff? What went on with that?
You were saying gravity, what was that again?
Gravity Probe B, to measure the Earth's gravitomagnetic field.
I'm not familiar with that, no. Sadly enough. But I'll definitely look into it. yeah. So, but no. Tell me more. I'm absolutely interested.
Well, it's similar to like a gravitomagnetic field would be like gravity's like the stationary thing, but when you have a moving mass or a moving object, just like a moving charge creates a magnetic field, even though a stationary
Mm-hmm.
charge has an electric field. Like a
Mm-hmm.
stationary mass has just a regular gravitational field, but a moving mass will actually produce a small gravitomagnetic field,
Right.
similar to the way that Maxwell's equations work for electromagnetic fields. There's a
Right.
component for moving masses that produces this sort of warping of space-time. So they had built this gravity probe B thing with these super
Mm-hmm.
sensitive neodymium gyroscopes. I don't know if they're
Yes.
neodymium. They might
Okay.
niobium, I think they are.
Niobidium, I think, something like that.
Yeah, they're these super spherical and super sensitive gyroscopes that they use to
Mm-hmm.
sort of they drag the thing in Earth's behind the Earth as it moves through space and try to measure
That's
tiny
right. That's
perturbations,
right.
basically.
So now I know what you're talking about there, because we did detect what we call frame dragging. That, in point of fact, the gravitational field does exactly what Einstein said it does.
Yep.
But
Yeah, it's very interesting to but could that maybe be used to create where you could drag the frames and sort of maybe
oh,
like gravity in front of the
absolutely.
ship or something, you know?
Absolutely. In fact, that's the whole idea behind, the warp drive from last week. But in terms of how scientists today are doing it, like, I can't even remember their names, but I put that link on your page. But essentially, when you're creating a contraction of gravity in front of you and an extension of gravity in back of you to push your spacecraft along, what you're doing is that's all frame dragging. All of that is where essentially you're taking space and time itself and moving it. And so that's what they mean by frame dragging. And that's the whole idea behind that kind of jet propulsion using gravity or warp propulsion.
Warp propulsion, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of the why I thought that the mercury plasma and the Nazi Bell idea sounded so intriguing because it's sort of like
Yeah.
it's this rotating heavy mass, but it's
Yes.
also
Yes.
doing
Mm-hmm.
something like charge wise that could make it increase this frame dragging effect potentially. It's sort of
Well. Mm-hmm.
one of the things you look for when you're trying to think outside the box and try to find something new that could be used to build the next generation of space probes or
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, I mean, let's just say, just as a premise, that aliens exist and they've come and visited and all of that stuff. If that's true and somehow we just accidentally got a piece of their technology, this is, beyond worth its weight in gold. This would set us sort of 1,000 years into our own future. So, the whole idea of keeping it all under lock and key and killing people off, that makes sense. I mean, just as like the nuclear bomb. If you get your hands onto it, you don't want anybody else having it. But the idea certainly that the Nazi Bell would have been kept secret and people would have died, and if there was anything relevant to that technology, it makes perfect sense. And I don't, once we have the ability to distort magnetic and electric fields, I do believe that we are on that threshold of doing the sort of stuff that I do with quantum gravity. I think that we should all be, a little bit sort of weary that this hasn't been going on for some time now. On that level, I'm a conspiracy theorist. But like you, a scientist trying to find, is there any actual evidence for it? Does the mathematics support it? It still has to work within some realm of relativity theory, for example.
Right.
And quantum mechanics was probably, the missing link. But, yeah.
Right, because that's where our theory is not complete. We don't have the quantum gravity. We don't have that threshold between electromagnetism and gravity, even just gravitation on a quantum scale. So there's got to be, if there's an answer anywhere, it's in physics that it's where we
That's
have
right.
the blind spots.
That's right. And like I guess said last week, there's the notion that if we could have done it, we would have done it by now, right? It's not like we don't fall in. If it was easy for the universe to do, we would have figured it out by now, like, creating a wheel out of stone or something like that.
Right,
But it's not
would have
easy.
stumbled across.
This is just not easy. Just like your HD TV is not easy to create. So the universe hasn't just presented caveman with HD TVs and the electricity to power it with. So it just takes a lot of ingenuity, and that's where physics gives us the upper hand, or at least math and science give us the upper hand.
Right, because without the math part of it, I mean, you don't have any quantitative description of things. I mean, you can qualitatively say, well, I think this will do this, and this should work, But if you really want to build and engineer anything, you're going to need the math side of it to, make any sort of calculations. How much lift are you going to produce? Are you going to build a craft out of this? Are you going to need to fly through an atmosphere? Are you going to need to fly through water?
Precisely. I mean, and that's how we, with flying, for example, how we, beat Mach 1, right? It wasn't simply that we believed, oh, yeah, we can travel faster than sound. In fact, almost everybody at the time thought that everything would get destroyed when you approach the speed of sound. It was the math and the aerodynamics that we were just figuring out that said, oh, no. There is a technique. There's a way. You slope the wings back, you create a delta wing formation, and you can, get through the speed of sound without tearing your aircraft apart. Great. Okay. And it's that kind of insight or that kind of stuff that we're really trying to get now, which is what you're working on and what a lot of your viewers are working on. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I'd like to maybe think that one day someone who watches my podcast and is thinking about these sort of things in a different way, that it leads to the next kind of breakthrough. That would kind of be really cool. But who knows? Maybe sometimes you waste 5 years on something that turns out to be a complete dead end too. So
That's right. And there we turn to Edison. Wasted a lot of his there. So he spent those 5 years creating corporations, right? I was just watching or listening to something about Tesla last night, in terms of Marconi and all of that stuff. But inevitably, the Patent and Trademark Office, granted him the rights to transport to radio signals that could actually be used to communicate with. But there's just a lot of crap that surrounds the work that we do, and one of the most pernicious is funding. So that we know we can change the world, but without the actual capital to do it, all of a sudden you're just sort of doing your own work in your own laboratory with no help.
Now,
and so we've got.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We have about 4 minutes left. We noticed that there is an equation on the whiteboard behind you, but we just wanted to give you an update that there's 4 minutes left. Is there anything that you wanted to promote? We have to sign off soon, so just a quick heads up.
That was from our discussion
function.
last week. He was talking about polynomials, so I just wanted to write down what a polynomial, the form of a polynomial is, and there's basically a scalar and then a first dimension, the second dimension, third dimension of the different terms, and each one represents a linearly independent variable. So you have an infinite number of linearly independent variables. But anyways, that's math equations and stuff. We lose half our viewers when we start talking about math, I think. But and a lot of people I think we lost a lot of people in our discussion from last week when we started going off on all the deep math stuff, which that's a fun side of things, and I don't think I'd be able to have an entertaining show about math and really teach people math. Math's like one of those things you just have to go and learn and struggle with and spend time with in order to figure out and be like, oh, well, this is why we need that, and this is why we need that, and this is why you need certain equations in order, and just basically how to think about things mathematically and all the different tools that you have in the library of different math. That most people, when they think of math, they just think of arithmetic or multiplication or just what they did in algebra and fractions and what they were taught with the algebra, and I see a lot of people with they post the I still haven't used algebra to this day, you know, like I didn't another day passed and I didn't use algebra once, and well, that just depends on what kind of career you're going to go in. If you're an engineer or a physicist, you're going to use algebra every single day.
That's right.
If you're going to be a whatever, you know, then you probably won't need it. If you're just going to work a regular job, you probably won't need algebra. You're right. But if you want to get into math or figuring stuff out as far as, you know, with physical quantities and quantifying things and measurements and doing that sort of stuff, you're going to need math, and you're going to use it every day if that's what the field you choose to go into. So anyways, yeah, that sort of wraps up my whole thing. Like the ancient aliens, I'm not sold on it. Again, you know, anything I pretty much see in the mainstream lamestream media, I generally take with a grain of salt anyway. You know, just the fact that it's getting on TV just goes to show you that it's probably just a bunch of bullshit anyway. uh, so but anyways, it's I don't really I mean, it's cool that they're talking about aliens on TV and stuff, but this is really the weaker stuff. They're not really getting into a lot of the deeper, harder questions, and it just amazes me how.
Well, I got a question. I got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Do you think these History Channel people just smoke entirely too much weed?
That's a possibility. I mean, they're probably doing it behind the scenes with the producers. You know, the camera goes off, they all light up a fatty and pass it around. Who knows, man? I don't know. I don't call the shots over at the you know, the pilot season when they just look through all the shows and they're like, all right, we're gonna do these ones and we're gonna choose
And
these
if
ones.
they had you as a producer, would you join them?
If they asked me to have my own show on aliens, I would.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. They would probably censor about half of my content. So.
Would you join them in the cipher?
But anyways, I don't know. It would be kind of cool to be on mainstream TV, but I don't know. I kind of like being the obscure, outside the box kind of thing. You know, I don't know. It would be kind of cool to have the viewership, but man, I'm not. I'm really. It's not. It's not as exciting to say I don't know rather than be, you know, to be like, look, I have all the answers and it's aliens. You know, that's what they'd want me to say. If I were to be on TV, I'd probably have to give them give that line a lot. You know what I mean?
All right, no, I
don't
definitely
know. I
understand
don't
that.
know.
We're signing off, so I mean we can continue next week. I appreciate your honesty, sir, and thank you for calling in. And we will be back next week. Anything to sign off, sir?
No, that's it, man. Thanks for running my show today, and have a great day.
I appreciate it. You guys, take care. See you next week. The Alien Scientist.
Thank you.